I thought I'd stumbled on history when I found that old fallout shelter in the woods. The door was rusted, the air was stale, and everything inside looked untouched for decades. But the deeper I went, the clearer it became. This place wasn't abandoned. It was sealed. Something down there had been waiting, and the moment I opened that hatch, it woke up. The first time I saw the hatch, it was almost invisible beneath the dying leaves, a circular slab of rusted steel buried in the forest floor, hidden beneath decades of dirt, moss, and decay. I'd only found it because my boot slipped on the edge of something metallic, sending a hollow clang echoing through the trees. I froze. That sound didn't belong out here. The woods were silent except for the faint hum of insects and the whisper of wind through the bare branches. My flashlight beam trembled across the patch of ground until it caught the outline of a wheel handle. My heart thumped hard. A fallout shelter. It had to be. The old maps of this region, the ones I'd collected from my urban exploration channel, marked this area as government property during the Cold War. I'd been chasing rumors of abandoned bunkers for months, hoping for a glimpse of history or something stranger. I knelt beside the hatch and brushed away more dirt. The steel was scarred with pitted rust, but still solid. Stamped into the metal, almost unreadable, were the words, "Property of the U.S. Civil Defense, 1961. A thrill went through me. This was real. I set up my tripod and camera, narrating in a hushed tone. Found what looks like an untouched Cold War fallout shelter hidden in northern Oregon. No signs of human activity. Going to try to open it. The handle was stiff, refusing to move at first, then groaned slowly as I forced it counterclockwise. With a reluctant hiss, the seal broke. A foul draft escaped, a mix of mold, metal, and something else I couldn't place, something sweet. I gagged, turning my face away. The circular door creaked open, revealing a ladder descending into darkness. My flashlight cut through the dust like a thin blade. "All right," I whispered to the camera. "Here we go." The metal rungs were cold and slick with moisture. Every step echoed down the shaft, a metallic heartbeat that bounced off the unseen walls below. The air thickened as I descended, heavy, stale, and wrong. At the bottom, I found a narrow corridor lined with peeling white tiles. Rust streaks dripped down the walls like dried blood. A row of emergency lights, long dead, hung crookedly overhead. I took a cautious step forward. My boots splashed in shallow water that reeked of mildew. Something scurried across the floor ahead. I jerked the flashlight toward it, catching only a flash of movement. Thin, pale, quick. My pulse spiked. "Probably a rat," I muttered, though it hadn't moved like one. I reached a heavy steel door halfway down the corridor. It was slightly ajar. A faded sign read, "Living Quarters, Level 1." The beam of my flashlight swept over a room frozen in time, metal bunks lined against the wall, personal belongings scattered across the floor, a broken radio, children's toys, a doll with half its face melted. Something about the silence made my skin crawl. Then I saw it. On the far wall, drawn in thick black paint, were shaky letters spelling, "Don't open the second door." Behind me, I thought I heard the faint clang of metal above, the sound of the hatch sealing shut. I spun around. "Hello!" My voice echoed back at me. Nothing, only the slow drip of water. I pointed the camera back up the ladder. The light barely reached the top. The hatch was closed. And then, from deeper in the corridor, came a sound I'll never forget, a long, wet, dragging breath. The sound wasn't human. It came from the end of the corridor, low, wet, and uneven, like someone struggling to breathe through water. My flashlight trembled in my grip as I pointed it toward the noise, but the beam only caught the shimmer of moisture on the far wall. The air felt heavier now, warmer. I swallowed hard, forcing a shaky laugh at the camera. Could be old pipes," I whispered. The words felt weak even as I said them. The living quarters stretched out before me, 6 bunks, a table overturned, canned food rusted shut. On one wall, someone had carved tally marks, dozens of them, maybe hundreds, into the metal. Each line was jagged, frantic, desperate. At the end of the row, I found a rusted locker still sealed with a padlock. I smashed it open with a nearby wrench. Inside were old uniforms marked Civil Defense and a small notebook wrapped in plastic. I pulled it out and flicked through the pages. The entries were messy, scrawled in pencil. Day 42. Supplies running low. The door downstairs is humming again. It's louder at night. Day 47. We lost Bill. He tried to open the second door. Day 48. We can still hear him. My stomach twisted. The pages after that were torn out. Behind me, a metallic tap echoed, sharp, deliberate. I turned slowly. A droplet of black water fell from the ceiling, landing on my shoulder. I brushed it off and froze. It wasn't water. It was thick, like oil, and it smelled faintly of iron. My flashlight flickered once, twice. "Okay," I whispered. Let's keep moving." At the far end of the corridor was another heavy door. The second one. It looked newer reinforced steel with a small glass viewport smeared with grime from the inside. Someone had bolted it shut from my side using 2 iron rods wedged across the handles. Something behind that door shifted. I stumbled back. The sound was soft, almost imperceptible. a slow scrape like nails on concrete. Then came the breathing again, closer this time. "Hello," my voice cracked. "Is someone in there?" Silence. Then knock, knock, knock. 3 slow, deliberate raps against the steel. Every instinct in me screamed to run, but the rational part of my brain, the one that still believed this was all explainable, wanted proof. My channel needed it. I raised the camera to the viewport and wiped the glass with my sleeve. For a split second, the light caught movement, something pressed against the inside. Pale, wet, a face maybe, but wrong. The features melted and reformed, the eyes sliding too far apart before disappearing again. I dropped the camera. It hit the ground with a clatter. The door began to vibrate. The bolts holding it creaked, the metal flexing under invisible pressure. A thin stream of that same black fluid seeped through the crack between the doors, pooling at my feet. It smelled alive. "Nope," I muttered, backing away. "Nope, I'm done." I turned and ran toward the ladder. My boots splashed through the shallow water, heartbeat roaring in my ears. When I reached the shaft, I aimed my flashlight upward and froze. The hatch was open again. A figure stood at the top, silhouetted by the moonlight. Too still, too tall. "Hey!" I shouted. "Who's up there?" No response. Then the figure tilted its head unnaturally far, like its neck was bending from inside. And with a slow, graceful motion, it began to climb down toward me, without using the ladder. At first I thought it was an illusion, some trick of the light or exhaustion twisting what I saw. But as the figure descended, its movement became clear. It wasn't climbing, it was sliding. Its limbs dangled loosely, shoulders scraping against the walls of the shaft, head tilted so far it almost touched its back. My flashlight caught the pale gleam of skin slick with something viscous like oil. "Stop!" I shouted, backing into the corridor. The word echoed, meaningless. The thing didn't stop. It didn't even seem to hear me. The only sound was the wet, rhythmic scrape of its body against the metal walls. I ran. My boots pounded through ankle-deep water, splashing across the narrow hall. The beam of my flashlight bounced wildly off the walls as I turned corners I didn't remember passing before. The shelter felt wrong now, longer, different. I reached another junction where a faded sign read, "Supply Storage! Level 2 Access!" I ducked inside and slammed the door shut behind me, pressing my back against it. Silence. I forced myself to breathe. "Okay," I whispered, camera shaking in my hand. "We're safe, just for a minute." The room was smaller than I expected, lined with metal shelves stacked with dusty boxes. Emergency rations, medical kits, batteries. The air was heavy, laced with rot and the faint sting of ammonia. Something caught my eye, a portable recorder sitting on a table covered in grime. I brushed it off and hit the play button. A man's voice crackled through the static, hoarse, terrified. "Day 51! We've sealed the lower levels. It keeps calling us." Sometimes it sounds like my wife. Sometimes it's just breathing. "Don't answer it. Don't go near the second door." Static hissed for a few seconds, then faintly, a whisper, "You're still here." I dropped the recorder. The voice wasn't on the tape. It came from the hallway. I pressed my ear to the steel door. The faint sound of dripping echoed outside. Then, slowly, the metallic clink of footsteps in shallow water. Whatever it was moving, dragging itself closer. I looked around desperately. The only other exit was a small maintenance tunnel barely large enough to crawl through. Without thinking, I grabbed my flashlight and forced myself into it. The walls were tight, scraping my shoulders, the air thick with dust and mold. Every few feet, I had to pause to breathe. Behind me, I heard the door creak open. Metal groaned, water splashed. It was in the room. I crawled faster, my flashlight flickering with every bump. The tunnel curved, then opened into another section, this one wider, filled with rusted pipes and machinery. For a moment, I allowed myself to breathe. Then I saw something on the far wall, a mural. Painted crudely in red, it showed a spiral descending into darkness, surrounded by hundreds of stick figures kneeling before it. In the center, a black circle. Below it, words smeared in the same color. "They fed it until it learned to speak." My skin prickled. The sound of footsteps echoed again, this time from both directions. I turned my flashlight one way, then the other, but the corridor stretched endlessly. No exits, no light. The air grew warmer, humming faintly like a heartbeat trapped in the walls. I aimed the camera at myself, voice trembling. If anyone finds this, the shelter wasn't for people. It was built to hold something they found down here. A sudden clang reverberated through the pipes. Then a whisper, inches from my ear. "Don't run." I swung the flashlight around. Nothing. Then something cold and wet brushed against my ankle. I screamed, kicked backward, and crawled into the dark as fast as I could, straight into another door. Stamped across it were the words, "Level 3, Containment Access." And this one wasn't locked. The handle on the containment door was cold enough to burn my skin. I hesitated, palm hovering above the metal, pulse hammering in my ears. Every instinct screamed not to touch it, but curiosity has a cruel way of drowning out fear. I tightened my grip on the flashlight, steadied the camera on my chest harness, and turned the wheel. The door groaned open, releasing a gust of air that stank of rot and chemicals. It was the smell of something long dead and something else trying to live again. My flashlight swept across the chamber beyond. It wasn't like the other rooms. The walls weren't tiled or concrete. They were steel, reinforced and scarred, as if someone or something had tried to claw its way out. Rows of cages lined both sides of the corridor, most of them torn open. Inside, I saw scraps of decayed uniforms, chains, broken restraints. A faded stencil above the first cage read, "Specimen 1A, Biological Anomaly." I stepped closer. The inside walls were coated in a dark residue that shimmered slightly under the light. It wasn't rust, it pulsed. "Jesus," I whispered. At the end of the room stood a reinforced observation window, its glass cracked but mostly intact. I brushed away the grime to peer through. Behind the glass was a large cylindrical tank filled with murky green fluid. Suspended inside was something vaguely human, curled like a fetus, but its limbs were wrong, too long, too thin, tubes connected to its spine. My breath fogged the glass. Then one of its fingers twitched. I stumbled back, hitting the metal railing behind me. My camera jostled, capturing the moment as bubbles rose inside the tank. A faint vibration rippled through the floor. I turned to run, then stopped dead. The door I'd entered through was now sealed shut. The wheel had turned on its own. No. The wheel was locked from the other side. Behind me, the fluid in the tank began to drain. A loud hiss filled the air as steam vented from the walls. Lights flickered to life above me, emergency red flooding the corridor in pulses. Alarms began to wail, their sound muffled and broken. I spun around just as the tank cracked. A fracture spread like lightning through the glass, and the thing inside unfolded itself. Its skin peeled away from the fluid with a sickening slurp, revealing muscles and veins like black wires. Its eyes, or where its eyes should have been, glowed faintly orange like coals in a dying fire. It stepped out as the tank shattered completely. I froze, back pressed against the wall. The creature's body was half human, half liquid, its movements jerky as though it hadn't quite learned how to be alive. "Please," I whispered. I don't belong here." It tilted its head, mirroring me. For a heartbeat, we simply stared at each other. Then it spoke, not with a mouth, but with a voice that vibrated through the walls. "You opened it." The sound was everywhere inside my chest, behind my eyes. I screamed, clutching my head. The lights flickered again, and for a moment, the creature disappeared, just gone, like it had never been there. Silence. Then something touched my shoulder. I turned slowly. Nothing behind me, just a faint trail of black liquid leading toward the maintenance tunnel I'd crawled through earlier. The whisper came again, softer this time. Down, deeper. The floor shook beneath my boots. Far below, I heard the grind of heavy machinery, the sound of another door unlocking, and with it came a rising hum, low and hungry, echoing up from the dark. Whatever I'd freed, it wasn't alone. The floor trembled under my boots, dust falling from the ceiling in fine gray clouds. Somewhere below, the machinery roared to life again, echoing like the heartbeat of something vast and ancient. The lights along the corridor began to flicker in rhythm with the sound. Pulse, hum, pulse. I pressed my back against the wall, breathing through the metallic taste in the air. The black residue I'd seen before had spread, streaking across the steel in branching patterns like veins. It moved slowly, almost imperceptibly, toward the newly opened hatch at the far end of the room. I didn't want to go down there. Every part of me screamed to climb back up, to force the upper doors open, to find daylight again. But behind me was the containment chamber, and that thing. I could still feel its presence. Watching, waiting. The hatch gaped open, revealing a spiral staircase of rusted iron descending into complete darkness. I aimed my flashlight down. The beam disappeared after a few feet. "This is insane," I whispered to the camera, my voice shaking. "The shelter goes deeper than any of the blueprints showed. Way deeper." "Whatever's down there! It's awake!" I started down. The stairs groaned with each step. The air thickened, warm and humid, heavy with a sweet, rotten smell like old fruit. The deeper I went, the louder the humming became, an unnatural frequency that made the flashlight buzz in my hand. Halfway down, the walls changed. The metal gave way to concrete, and then something else. The surface looked organic, slick and uneven, like flesh fossilized in stone. I ran my hand along it and pulled back instantly. It was warm. The hum rose a pitch higher, vibrating through my ribs. At the bottom, I found another corridor, but this one was different, arched, ribbed, with strange black growths pulsating faintly along the floor. A sign on the wall, half buried in grime, read, "Level 4, Biological Research." Papers littered the ground, lab reports, test results, photos too faded to see clearly. One folder, still mostly intact, caught my eye. The cover bore a red stamp, Project Hollow Mouth. I opened it. Inside were sketches of a humanoid shape surrounded by handwritten notes. Subject appears to imitate human form but lacks skeletal structure. Responds to sound and memory stimuli. Potential sentience unknown. Containment priority level 1 hazard. Under no circumstances should verbal contact be attempted. I froze. Verbal contact. I'd already heard it speak. From somewhere deeper in the tunnel came a noise like wet fabric being dragged across concrete. Then, faintly, the sound of whispering, many voices overlapping, speaking my name. I turned off the flashlight, stupid, but instinctive. In the darkness, the whispers grew louder. "Eli!" My stomach dropped. That voice! It was my mother's. "Eli, honey, please, you have to come down here." It was impossible. She'd been dead for years. I pressed my back against the wall, shaking. "Stop it!" I shouted. "You're not her!" The whispering stopped. Then came a single, slow step from the dark. My flashlight flickered back to life just in time to catch the glimpse of a pale face inches from mine, featureless, skin stretched tight like wax, except for the mouth. The mouth was too wide, running ear to ear. It smiled. I bolted. The tunnel twisted, splitting into branching corridors. The humming behind me became a roar, shaking the walls. I turned a corner and nearly tripped over a skeleton slumped against the wall, still clutching a revolver. Beside it, written in blood, were the words, "IT learned your voice." My flashlight dimmed again, and in the echoing dark, my own voice whispered back at me, soft, mocking, and impossibly close. "You shouldn't have come here, Eli." I ran until my lungs burned and the air turned hot in my throat. Every step echoed off the narrow walls, bouncing back in distorted fragments that didn't sound like me anymore. When I finally stopped, the corridor behind me was gone, not just dark gone. The tunnel had sealed itself, smooth and seamless as if the concrete had melted shut. I pressed my hand against it. It was warm and pulsing, like something beneath the surface was alive. My mind reeled. "That's not possible," I whispered. "That can't!" A deep vibration cut me off, rippling through the floor. The walls groaned, shifting subtly, the metal pipes embedded in them twisting like ribs. The entire shelter was moving, rearranging itself. It wasn't just a bunker. It was a living organism. My flashlight beam trembled across the warped corridor ahead. What had once been right angles now bent and curved unnaturally, like the space itself was folding inward. I took a cautious step forward, boots squelching through a thin layer of black sludge. Somewhere deeper inside, I heard faint mechanical noises, doors opening, closing, metal scraping against metal. The bunker was reconfiguring, sealing exits and creating new passages. It wanted me to go somewhere. I didn't have a choice. I moved carefully, marking the walls with chalk from my pack just in case I looped back. But minutes later, when I turned around, the marks were gone. The whisper started again, faint at first. "Eli, this way." The voice was clearer now, my mother's voice again, calm, reassuring. I tightened my grip on the flashlight and pressed on. The corridor opened into a massive chamber that looked nothing like the levels above. The walls were lined with machinery, computers fused with organic growths, screens flickering with static and pulses of orange light. Cables hung from the ceiling like vines, dripping fluid that hissed when it touched the floor. In the center of the room was a chair. Not an ordinary chair, it was part of the floor, grown out of the black material that coated everything else. Metal restraints clung to its arms and legs. Around it, dozens of bones lay scattered, picked clean and brittle. I circled it slowly, filming as I went. It's like some kind of control center," I whispered. "But it's alive." A low hum vibrated through the air again, rising to a frequency that made my teeth ache. The monitors flickered one by one until a single image appeared on all of them, my own face staring into the lens, whispering something I couldn't hear. I backed away. No, that's not possible." Grainy black and white footage filled them, scenes of soldiers in hazmat suits dragging screaming civilians into the shelter, locking the doors, sealing them inside. The people didn't die quietly. The footage jumped, then showed the same soldiers collapsing as black tendrils burst from their mouths and eyes. The infection spread fast, consuming everything. The final frame froze on a single soldier scrawling something on the wall before he died. "IT's not from here!" My flashlight sputtered out. Total darkness swallowed me. Then something clicked nearby, soft, metallic. A door opening. I turned the light back on just in time to see a figure step out from behind the machinery. It looked like me. Same jacket, same flashlight, same camera blinking red on its chest. It smiled. "You're almost there," it said, voice perfectly mine. "It just needs to remember the rest." The lights around us dimmed. The walls pulsed faster, the hum deepening into a heartbeat. The double, whatever it was, lifted its hand toward me, fingers dripping black fluid. "Don't fight it, Eli," it whispered. "You're part of the experiment now." I froze as the other version of me stepped closer, the light from my trembling flashlight revealing every detail of his face. He wasn't a perfect copy. His skin was slightly too pale, the eyes a fraction too wide, the smile stretched just a little too long. It was like someone had built me from memory but hadn't quite understood how humans fit together. He circled me slowly, the wet slap of his boots echoing across the chamber. The shadows moved with him, alive and twitching. "Who are you?" I managed to choke out. He tilted his head, the smile never faltering. "You already know. I'm what's left of you, the part this place kept." I stepped back, nearly tripping over a bundle of cables that pulsed faintly beneath my boots. Kept? I repeated. What does that mean? He looked around the chamber as if listening to something in the walls. When they built this shelter, they were afraid of what was coming. But what came wasn't a bomb. His voice dropped to a whisper. It was a door. My heart hammered. A door to what? He pointed upward, toward the ceiling where black tendrils curled and pulsed. They opened something they couldn't close. It needed mind's memories to rebuild itself. It learned by copying. The first thing it copied was them. The last thing it copied, he smiled wider, was me. The lights flickered, and for a moment I saw flashes of others, dozens of figures identical to me, standing in a circle around the chamber before vanishing again. You're lying. He stepped closer, and I could smell the metallic stench of rot on his breath. Am I? Think about it, Eli. How long have you been down here? Do you even remember how you found this place, or did it find you? Something cold crawled up my spine. My memories flickered, vague images of the forest, the rusted hatch, the descent into the dark. But they didn't feel right. They felt planted, like scenes from someone else's dream. The other me leaned in, whispering, "You're not supposed to be outside. You were born here. You're one of its memories." I snapped. "Stop it!" My voice echoed, brittle and hollow. He didn't flinch. "It's waking up, Eli. The bunker. It wants all of us back." The machinery around us came to life, screens flickering with static and symbols that crawled like insects. The restraints on the central chair snapped open, clanging against the metal frame. "It needs a core," the copy said, stepping toward the chair. "A host to finish what it started." I raised the flashlight, ready to swing. "Stay back," he only smiled. "You can't kill what's already you." Then, faster than I could react, he lunged. We collided hard, the flashlight clattering across the floor. I felt his hands close around my throat, cold, strong, unrelenting. His face was inches from mine, his eyes black now, reflecting no light. "I remember everything," he hissed. "And soon, so will you." I reached blindly, my fingers brushing the fallen flashlight. I slammed it into his temple. Once, twice, he staggered back, leaking black fluid from the wound. I didn't wait. I grabbed the camera and bolted toward the corridor, not caring where it led. Behind me, his voice echoed, distorted and distant. "You can't escape yourself." The walls rippled again, the passage shifting and closing in behind me. The air stank of rust and decay. My heart pounded as I ran, desperate for any sign of an exit. Somewhere behind me, that thing laughed, a sound that wasn't human anymore. And in that laughter, I realized the truth. I wasn't alone in the dark. The bunker was awake. I didn't stop running until my lungs burned and my legs trembled beneath me. The corridor twisted like intestines, slick with condensation, leading me into a part of the shelter I hadn't seen before. Pipes hissed overhead, dripping rust-colored water that tasted like old blood when it hit my lips. The hum that haunted the place had changed deeper now, rhythmic, like a heartbeat pulsing through the walls. I stopped when I reached a heavy steel door half buried in rubble. A faded sign read, "Restricted, Access, Project, Caros." The letters were almost gone, scratched out by something with claws. My hands shook as I brushed away the dust, revealing a keycard reader still faintly glowing red. I tried one of the old badges I'd found on a desk days ago. The light flicked green and the door creaked open, releasing a gust of air that smelled of ozone and rot. Beyond it was a narrow staircase descending into blackness. Every instinct screamed to turn back, but I couldn't. I had to know what this place really was. The echo of my footsteps followed me down, swallowed quickly by the void below. At the bottom, I found a massive circular chamber. It looked older than the rest of the bunker, as if it had been built over something ancient. In the center was a circular hatch embedded in the floor, surrounded by symbols burned into the concrete curves and spirals that seemed to move if I stared too long. The air here felt heavier, charged with static. My flashlight flickered, and I caught glimpses of shapes writhing beneath the hatch's thick glass window. My stomach twisted. There was something alive down there. I pressed the camera to my chest and whispered into it, This is below sub-level 4. Looks like some kind of containment zone." There's movement," a voice answered me from the darkness. "Don't look at it." I spun, heart in my throat. A figure limped from the shadows, an old man in a tattered lab coat, his skin translucent, veins black like ink. His ID badge read Dr. K. Rayner, one of the names from the research logs I'd found upstairs. "You shouldn't have opened the outer levels," he croaked. "It feeds on attention. Every time someone remembers, it grows stronger." "What is it?" I asked, voice shaking. He pointed at the hatch. "A fragment of something that shouldn't exist in this world. We thought we could contain it, study it, but it studies us. It mimics, replicates. Every person it's seen still walks these halls in its image." The doppelganger's words came flooding back, making my skin crawl. "The copies, they're real?" Rayner nodded weakly. "They're projections. The bunker's memories given form. You shouldn't have come here." A metallic groan echoed through the chamber, deep and resonant. The hatch trembled. "No," Raynor whispered, eyes wide with terror. "It's waking up again." I stumbled back as the floor shook violently. The walls pulsed with light, and the hum became a deafening roar. The hatch began to open slowly, reluctantly, like the mouth of some vast creature forcing itself awake. Through the widening gap, a pale liquid mass began to emerge. It wasn't a solid thing, more like a shadow-wearing flesh, shifting and folding in impossible ways. The smell of decay flooded the air. I dropped the camera and ran for the stairs. Behind me, Raynor screamed, a wet, choking sound that ended too quickly. I didn't look back. The corridor was collapsing, lights bursting, alarms wailing as I sprinted upward through the smoke and debris. When I reached the main hall, I slammed the door shut behind me, but I could still feel it below me, the heartbeat of something ancient, awake and hungry, and I knew it wasn't finished with me yet. When I finally reached the upper level, the shelter was silent. The air was colder now, the humming gone. For a moment I thought maybe the bunker had gone back to sleep, that the thing beneath the floor was trapped again. But then I heard it. A faint tapping, like knuckles against metal, echoing through the ventilation shafts. 3 taps. Pause. 3 more. The sound stopped, replaced by a soft whisper. "Eli, come back!" I staggered back, nearly dropping the flashlight. My heart was pounding so hard it hurt. That voice wasn't mine, but it sounded close enough to make my stomach turn. The whisper traveled along the pipes like a living thing, fading into the distance. I didn't wait to hear it again. I climbed the final ladder and pushed through the rusted hatch that led outside. Cold night air hit my face. I collapsed on the ground, gasping, the forest stretching dark and endless around me. The stars above looked dimmer than I remembered, the moon a faint smear behind low clouds. For a brief second I thought I was safe. Then I noticed the silence. No insects, no wind, no sound at all. The forest felt wrong. Too still, too heavy. When I turned toward the old service road, my stomach twisted. The trees leaned in different directions, their trunks warped as if melted and reshaped. The world looked slightly misaligned. I walked toward my truck, parked a few hundred yards away. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely get the keys in. The camera sat on the passenger seat, still recording. I reached for it, but the screen flickered to life on its own, static. Then an image of me, standing in front of the shelter entrance, only it wasn't live footage. I hadn't recorded that. In the video, my double looked directly into the lens and whispered, "You left the door open." I threw the camera out the window and floored the gas pedal. The forest sped by in a blur, but the road seemed to twist back toward the same clearing every time I blinked. My GPS flickered nonsense coordinates, the compass spinning wildly. Every tree looked the same. Every turn brought me back to that hatch. I slammed the brakes, breathing hard. "No," I muttered, gripping the wheel. "No, no, no!" Something moved in the rearview mirror. For a split second, I saw movement behind me, someone standing in the road. I turned, but there was nothing there, only shadows and the faint smell of ozone drifting from the trees. I drove again, faster this time, and then, finally, I broke through the tree line and saw lights. Civilization. Relief washed through me as I pulled in, stumbling out of the truck and nearly collapsing against the door. Inside, a man behind the counter gave me a confused look. "You all right, buddy? You look like hell." I nodded, catching my breath. "Yeah, just got lost in the woods." He handed me a bottle of water. "You're lucky you made it out. That old forest's been closed off for years." Something about contamination or radiation, government stuff. My chest went cold. "Contamination?" he shrugged. "They said it was from an old military project, fallout shelter or something." Behind him, a small TV flickered with a news broadcast. My stomach twisted as I saw the image on screen. A massive sinkhole had opened just miles from where I'd been, black smoke rising from its depths. The reporter's voice trembled as she described a strange biological mass spreading underground. The lights in the store flickered. The man frowned. Power's been weird lately." And then faintly, through the hum of the dying bulbs, I heard it again. 3 taps. Pause. 3 more, from beneath the floor. The clerk's expression shifted when the tapping grew louder. He looked down, frowning, as if he heard it too. "You got rats in here?" I asked, though my voice was trembling. He shook his head slowly. "Ain't no basement in this place." The tap stopped. Then the silence that followed was worse, thick, oppressive, alive. I could hear my pulse thudding in my ears. Something behind the shelves creaked, like wood warping under pressure. "Sir," I whispered, "you should get out." The man looked at me like I was insane. "You need rest, friend. You're scaring me." I opened my mouth to reply, but the floor bulged beneath him. His eyes widened just before the linoleum split open like paper. A slick black tendril whipped upward, wrapping around his leg. He screamed, grabbing at the counter as it pulled him down. I leapt forward, grabbing his arm, but the strength in that thing was unimaginable. It yanked again, dragging him halfway through the floor. His nails tore bloody streaks across the tile. "Help me!" he screamed, eyes wild. Then he was gone. The ground sealed shut behind him, leaving no trace. No hole, no blood, just a faint ripple in the linoleum that slowly smoothed itself out. I backed away, chest heaving. My hands were shaking uncontrollably. Then the TV crackled, the image twisting into static before a face appeared. My face. "You shouldn't have run, Eli," it said. "It was never underground. It was waiting for you to open the door." The screen shattered before I could move. I stumbled outside, desperate for air, but the night felt heavier than before. The clouds above churned like boiling tar. A faint vibration ran through the asphalt, a pulse that matched my heartbeat. I climbed into my truck and started it, tires screeching as I tore down the highway. But the world looked wrong, empty, stretched thin. No cars, no wind, just a faint hum beneath everything, like the world itself was breathing. A few miles out, I saw headlights. Relief shot through me until I realized they weren't headlights, they were eyes. Dozens of them glowing faintly from the tree line. I pressed the accelerator harder, the truck rattling as I flew past. One of the things moved closer to the road, its shape flickering in and out like a bad transmission. For a moment, it looked human. Then its jaw split open far too wide, revealing teeth that seemed to extend forever. It whispered as I passed, "You brought it with you!" I didn't stop until I reached town. The streets were nearly deserted save for a few cars parked crookedly, their doors open. A faint mist hung low to the ground. Storefronts flickered with dying neon. I parked in front of a diner I used to visit when I was younger. The door was unlocked. Inside, the smell of burnt coffee and something rancid hit me. "Hello?" I called. A woman sat in a booth near the back. Her head was bowed, hair covering her face. "Ma'am?" I stepped closer and she looked up. It was my mother, except she'd been dead for 6 years. Her skin shimmered like oil, her eyes black pools of static. "Eli," she said softly, "come home." I stumbled backward, knocking over a chair. The floor beneath her rippled. She smiled, and the air began to pulse again. The diner lights exploded, showering sparks. I ran for the door, but her voice followed me, overlapping itself in hundreds of whispers. "You open the door, Eli." Now everything opens. The humming grew so loud it drowned everything else. The town around me began to shift, buildings bending, streets trembling, and then I saw it. The horizon itself was breathing. The town wasn't supposed to move. Buildings don't sway, streets don't twist, and the sky doesn't breathe. But standing in the middle of Main Street, I could see everything shifting, like reality itself was melting. Storefronts pulsed in and out of focus. The asphalt rippled beneath my boots, soft as flesh. The air tasted metallic like ozone and blood. I stumbled backward, clutching my flashlight like it could protect me. The beam flickered across warped shapes moving in the distance. People, or what used to be people, their silhouettes bent unnaturally, limbs too long, faces unfinished. Some crawled along the sides of buildings as if gravity no longer mattered. Others floated, flickering like projections trying to stabilize. Then the air vibrated again, deep, rhythmic, like a colossal heartbeat. The bunker's heartbeat. It had reached the surface. I turned and ran toward the edge of town, past cars half sunken into the trembling road. My mind raced with the doctor's words. It feeds on attention. Every time someone remembers, it grows stronger. But how could I stop remembering when it was rewriting the world around me? I reached the bridge leading out of town, or what was left of it. The water below it turned black, reflective like oil, and in that mirror I saw not my reflection, but something watching me. Its head tilted when I moved, delayed, as if struggling to mimic me. When I blinked, it smiled. "Not again," I whispered. "You're not real." The reflection's smile widened. "Neither are you." The bridge shook violently and the asphalt split open. I jumped back just as the concrete cracked in half, swallowing my reflection whole. A scream! "Mine, but not mine!" Echoed up from below. I ran again, through streets that seemed to rearrange themselves. Houses merged together, windows stretched into gaping mouths and signs twisted into unreadable symbols. The town wasn't dying, it was transforming. At the edge of what used to be a park, I saw movement, survivors. 2 people crouched beside a fire that burned blue, a man and a teenage girl. I approached slowly, raising my hands. "Hey," I called out, "you're alive!" The man spun around, holding a broken pipe like a weapon. His face was pale, eyes hollow. "Stay back! You came from the woods, didn't you?" I hesitated. "Yes, but then it's already in you." The girl tugged at his sleeve. "Dad, stop!" She looked at me, voice trembling. "He's not one of them. Not yet." I wanted to ask what she meant, but then I saw it. A faint shimmer around her outline, like heat distortion. Her hand flickered for half a second, then solidified again. "You've seen it too," I said. She nodded. "It's everywhere now." It got out. The man stepped forward, still gripping the pipe. "We were in the shelter. We escaped before it. Finished. But once you see it, it starts to see you." The girl pointed upward. "Look." I followed her gaze and froze. The clouds had split open, revealing a massive circular void pulsing with light, the same shape carved into the bunker floor. It wasn't the sky breathing, it was something behind it. The man whispered, "That's not the sky anymore." A low rumble rolled through the ground. The fire went out. From every street, figures began to emerge, silhouettes identical to us, dozens of copies marching toward the park, faces blank and hollow-eyed. It found us. I grabbed my flashlight and backed up. We need to move. The man nodded once. There's another shelter, West Ridge. Maybe we can. He didn't finish. One of the copies reached him first, its arm splitting open into a black tendril that pierced his chest. His eyes went wide as he collapsed. The girl screamed. I pulled her away and ran. Behind us, the town of Hollow Creek began to collapse inward, the sky folding like wet paper. And the thing above whispered my name. We ran until the world itself seemed to fall apart behind us. The road dissolved into dust, buildings collapsed into themselves, and the sky above pulsed like a wounded heart. The girl! Keep going, I shouted, though my voice was drowned by the rumbling. The horizon glowed faintly blue. Where's the ridge? She pointed ahead, gasping. There, past the trees. We stumbled through the forest, branches bending away as if the trees themselves feared what followed us. Every sound was amplified, the crunch of leaves, the rasp of our breath, the faint whisper that echoed through the woods. Eli, come home. Lydia stopped suddenly. Don't answer it, she said. I turned to her, breath ragged. You hear it too? She nodded. It talks to everyone differently, makes them trust it, that's how it spreads. We pushed forward until the trees broke into a clearing. There, half buried in mud, was another hatch. Smaller, newer, marked with the same insignia, P.R.O., Ject K. I rose. My stomach twisted. Another shelter, I said. This one looks active. Lydia hesitated. Do you think it's safe? I shook my head. No, but it's our only chance. We pried the hatch open and climbed down. The air inside was stale but still breathable. Emergency lights flickered along the concrete corridor. Unlike the other bunker, this one felt incomplete, unfinished, like it had been abandoned mid-construction. At the end of the hall stood a large steel door covered in frost. A single console blinked beside it, displaying one word, C.O. Caintment. Lydia whispered, What if this is where it came from? Then maybe it's where we can end it. The console screen flickered, showing static, then a line of text. W, welcome back, Eli. My blood ran cold. It knows we're here. Before I could react, the lights cut out. The hum began again, low at first and growing, filling every inch of the air. The walls vibrated. Something behind the door started to move. Lydia grabbed my sleeve. We have to go! The steel began to bend outward, groaning under pressure. A thin crack appeared, spilling black liquid that hissed as it touched the floor. I backed away, pulling her with me. Then the door burst open. A wave of shadow poured out, fluid, shapeless, alive. Faces surfaced within it, screaming silently before melting back into the dark. It wasn't one creature. It was every creature, every consciousness the bunker had devoured, fused together in endless agony. I heard my own voice whisper from within the mass, You can't escape yourself. Lydia screamed. The thing reached for her, tendrils stretching like smoke. Without thinking, I shoved her aside and raised my flashlight. The beam hit the center of the mass, making it recoil, shrieking in a dozen voices at once. That's when I saw it. Beneath the shifting surface, a core pulsing like a heart. The door. The real one. Light! I shouted. It hates the light! Lydia scrambled to grab a flare from a wall case. She struck it, flooding the corridor with blinding red. The creature screamed, retreating, but not fast enough. I ran forward and drove the flare into the heart of the mass. The explosion wasn't sound, it was memory. Images flashed behind my eyes, the scientists, the experiments, the first contact, the thing, learning, growing, waiting for someone to set it free. The light consumed everything. When I woke, the bunker was gone. The forest was quiet. Lydia lay beside me, breathing. Above us, the sky was clear for the first time in what felt like centuries. She opened her eyes weakly. Did we stop it? I looked toward the horizon. The sun was rising, but for a moment I swore it, blinked. I don't know, I said softly. The ground beneath us pulsed once, faint but steady, and then from deep below came 3 slow taps. Pause, 3 more. The door was still open.